very much for such a beautiful experience.
Thank you for bringing me over.
The film. So I have a lot of questions, and so the way I think we do it is I ask a couple of questions and then everybody else asks questions.
Okay.
So I'm going to begin by asking you to tell us a little bit about the genesis of this project and how you came to make it. And I mean, there's so much in it. You feel as if you're in Nigeria. You keep on getting suddenly reminded, oh, actually this is not Nigeria, but it's so deeply steeped in a culture. So can you tell us a little bit about how you came to make the film?
Yes, I was actually, thank you. I was in South Africa doing episodic television called Yizo Yizo for SABC, and my producer at the time read the script. Written by Darcy Pico, New York writer. She's a theater writer. I'm sure you're familiar with Jodie Pico. It's Jodie Pico's younger sister, Darcy. She's a writer, and she wrote this script. I mean, it's completely different, but basically, it's basically about this family, this Jewish American family, and this was going on, and I read it and I really like it because what I really liked about it is the universality of the story. And I thought, wow, it's one of those things that we all imagine could happen. It could happen anywhere, and the universality of it, the biblical aspect of it, Shakespeare, all those things kind of attracted me to it. So I spoke to her and we started working on the script, and I said I really like to do it, but I really wanted to bring it to a culture that I know very well. And that's how it all started. Try to get the money is the next thing, which took about 5 years because the script was watermarked by, very good institutions, and we got some funding, but we couldn't get the money to make it because everyone wanted a Jamie Foxx or Ali Berry in it. They wanted this known face. And for me, the interest of this subject for me was to actually bring its authenticity and to bring all those elements, those nuances into it. So that was the genesis of it. And then at one point I kind of gave up because I'm like, I'm a filmmaker. I should be making films, not chasing money, So I kind of gave up and wrote this little film with my friend, like in 10 days, called Restless City. We went out to shoot it for like 17 days, the film going to Sundance. Someone was watching that film at Sundance and like, wow, what's my next film? I'm like, I've got the script I want to make. So that's how I got the money for this.
Okay, that's really interesting for us as filmmakers to see how it is that you can sometimes get around problems with making films. Don't let it stop you, go and do something else that you can do. What about your relationship with the cinematographer, Bradford? Yeah?
Yes, Bradford, I've known, it's really interesting because Bradford he's known my work as a photographer for years. It was a student of Aili Gurima in Howard, and I used to I've kind of worked with a bunch of Howard kids like Malik Shahid. This the DP shot all like crop clean and all that. So Bradford knew my work through photography, and we met. He knew what was great is that he knew my work, so it was just a brilliant dialogue. And more importantly, we had similar references. If I talk to him about the streets of Bamako, he gets it. We have similar reference points, so it was just that. We could have been in the same band. It was just, we understood what we wanted to do, and he knew my work, so that really helped a lot. The fact that he's kind of been a fan of my photography for years.
And did you also like his work?
Yes, I mean, I knew he had something, and it's like, it was brilliant from the minute I saw his work, but he never got the chance to kind of really dive into feature. It's always difficult. Shot some student films with some friends, but I just knew, for me, it was just really the conversation. And I think for me, as with DPs, it's really the conversation, because sometimes the work you see is only because they're not given the chance to do something else.
Right.
And if you work with someone that wants it all lit a certain way, or this is what they want, that's what they have, and that's what they have on their reel. So that doesn't really reflect them. And so for me, the conversation is really it. very much. I mean, I don't think I really work with people based on what they've done. I think I work with them based on the conversation I have with them, the reference points, and spending time together. That's definitely it for us. And for all my team, whether it's Mobolaji, my costume designer, it's really that. It's really spending time together and, just really spending time together, watching stuff together, getting drunk together. It's really just spending time together and really getting what's in their head. New York is quite receptive to filmmaking, and like we shot the wedding scene in this kind of like old Russian banquet in Brighton Beach, and went in there and said we wanted to shoot film, and people kind of they were open to it. They were interested. So and not having, the difficulty is probably people asking you, they think it's an Hollywood film and they ask you for a big check and you tell them sorry, and it's very difficult to tell people like, I'm not actually getting paid. They're like, oh yeah. So no, but apart from that, really, that's what's so great. I mean, we're lucky to be making films in somewhere like, New York. I live in New York, where there's a lot of people that want to be a part of it, and that's great. Doing Restless City, I think we all went home with like $20 a day. But people wanted to be there; they enjoyed the experience, and there's a lot of people that want to do that. Right. So that was an advantage.
So, I'm opening it up. I just have one little question. Yes. Is that the Banco they really speak Yoruba?
Oh yeah. Definitely. And it's really interesting because I know that's come to me, a few Nigerians have asked me about that question, like, the Yoruba is kind of different. But for me, it's actually really interesting because I really wanted to cast this film in a way where it's not a Nigerian film, it's a Yoruba film. And Yoruba goes across from Nigeria all the way to Togo. Right. So different people speaking with different accents, and like Angelique Kidjo, people were shocked that she spoke Yoruba. Right. Isaac is from Ivory Coast. Right. So I kind of like that. I like the fact that, our countries go beyond borders. You people in Cameroon speaks Igbo, and if you go further down, more people. So it's not just, I will start people in Niger, people in Chad. So it's really, I didn't want, for me, borders really artificial. So, and I really wanted to do that.
It really comes across in your film because, as I said, you're in New York, but you could be somewhere in Africa. It's almost like that diaspora population lives within its culture so fully.
Definitely. And this could have been said anywhere. It could have been said in any metropolis. Whether it's Berlin, whether it's Paris. I just happen to live in New York, and I really wanted to kind of show in New York that I live in Brooklyn, and it's beautiful to wake up and be in Crown Heights on the corner of North Strand and something, and actually you see the diaspora. There's something so like you don't see that in films. What you see is Times Square or something, but actually there is you part of Brooklyn where if you could have been in Kingston or Lagos or somewhere for a minute. If for a quick second you might think you're somewhere else because you do see that. Beyond the language, for me, definitely, me and my DP, one of our biggest reference was the deities. We're really referencing the deities, the colors of the deities, whether it's Shango, whether it's Ogun. Those are the colors we're playing with, the Egun colors, the Egun masquerade. So we're really playing with those reds, the indigo, Adiwe, as in blue, so we really wanted the skin to be that blue-black, playing with indigo when you dye in indigo and it's the left of, you work with indigo, what it does to your skin, and we were playing with that. So I'll say that definitely the language, the color palettes, and very much, I for me personally, I'm so fascinated by the Yoruba theater. I grew up that. I grew up in neighborhoods where there were on every street there were 4 benches. And there was a local play group that comes to perform on every night. And that's what I kind of grew up knowing. Every evening we go down the street and there's benches and the local theater group performs wherever it is. My first, theatrical experience was watching Herbert Ogunde, and I remember as a kid going to the cinema to go and watch Ogunde Films, which is a Nigerian filmmaker, or all these Nigerian filmmakers like, BC Daughter of the River and all those things. So yes, it's very influential for me, and yeah, you know, literature, very much.
Yeah.
If I tell you the budget, I won't tell you the budget, but I'll tell you this, right? The budget is not enough for the craft service on a Woody Allen film. And a Woody Allen film is pretty low. So I don't even have, my budget is not even up to our, you know, the craft service.
What's the
And a
craft
Woody film.
service mean?
Meaning
The catering.
yeah.
Okay.
I really wanted to, very much wanted us to be in our head. What is it like for this woman that she's alone in this society, and you know, she doesn't have friends. The only friend she's got, a childhood friend, which is, you know, what's her name now? Sade, yeah. But she's alone. So how do we get into our head? What's it like? I remember, you know, being somewhere and you're so like isolated, you're just so in your own head, and you become numb to your surroundings. You know, you're walking home after you've got bad news or something. There's this feeling you get where nothing else exists. People could be calling you and you don't even hear them. And I really wanted to create that. And the best way for me was to, my DP was like, how do we create that? So we're kind of like, what happens if we isolate her from the crowd? So she becomes the focus, and we're watching her, and even the conversation, when there's a dialogue piece, we try to focus just on one person, whether it's on her or on who she's talking to, because it's that thing when people are talking to you and you're somewhere else, you sort of dozed off. So I was playing with that experimentally. Whether it worked or not is another thing. I came into filmmaking through photography and design, and I think obviously being a photographer is kind of trained my eye. So because of that, I don't really want to storyboard. I just want to go there and try and find ways to, especially when you're shooting low budget film, you need to get in there and do the minimum coverage as possible, but getting what you need. So it's getting there and looking through the room and thinking, okay, let's put the camera here and here, but that's really what I do. I don't storyboard. But the fact that I had this experience, I've got my camera, and photography is really interesting because actually I went into photography because I couldn't get money to make films, because I really, you know, I'm a filmmaker, I want to study, I wanted to make films, but it costs money to make films, so I bought a camera to document what I would like to photograph, to make films about one day, you know? And it's kind of been helpful because I have my camera and I frame things and you look through the lens, so that really helps a lot, you know? And being a designer as well, coming from textiles and fashion, it just really, because for me as a filmmaker, I really want to put emphasis on all the elements of filmmaking, you know, whether it's production design, whether it's costume, and it's very, you know, that, for me, it's that collaborative effort I really want to celebrate very much.
So when you said you and Bradford Young did a lot of talking before you went on the set to actually start shooting, how much talking actually happens on set?
I think on set it's really very little, because we're just in sync. I mean, we work together beyond these two films, you know, videos and short films and stuff. So we've kind of created this language, and we spend a lot of time going to watch things together, whether like, oh, there's a show at somewhere or somebody's doing something. So we spend time, that's where we spend most of our time, really talking about what we like. So on set, really, we try to sort of it's really about how can we get coverage. You know, we've got limited time. What's your suggestion? What's my suggestion? Whichever one works better, or maybe we'll combine them both. Maybe, you know. So that's really it. When we're on set, it's really about being practical.
And do you look through the camera, or do you leave him to do that?
It's difficult for me not to look through the camera because I can't even see. I can't see without looking through a lens. I can't even see looking through a monitor. I never look at monitors.
Right.
You know, because I've so used to looking at things through lenses that I don't look at monitors.
Right.
You know?
That's always a question.
Yeah,
Some
yeah.
people
No, I just go, I mean, for me, monitors is just, it throws me off. Yeah. Because I know that's not the palette, I know that's not the color, I know there's so many tapes around the monitor and numbers and all that, so it just puts me off, so I never look at it. Yeah. You know? I'd rather look through because sometimes, I'd rather just look through the frame and concentrate on certain details. Or if I don't look through the monitor, or if I don't look through the frame, then I tell my DP, I want to cover this scene, but you know what, the whole scene should be covered just a feet or just the back of her head, and that's it. So I kind of, let's use certain lenses and just cover the back of her head, and that's it, you know?
And if you have like a classical scene where there's dialogue or where there's emotions or where there's movement.
On set, I think I just let the actors do their thing, because I mean, for me, I'm not one of the, I mean, for me, I think the process of working with actors, for me, by the time the actor get on set, I have absolute confidence on that actor. I wouldn't have even cast them if I didn't think they can deliver or they can give me something. And so I really trust them. We're artists working together, and that's what I try to work with people like that, people that I trust and I believe their work, and when they do come on set, I let them do their thing. And if they're not, maybe I suggest one or two things, but I really let them go, because I think that's the best way. I really don't want to come in and have an idea of what I want, because if I have an idea of what I want, then what's the point? You know, there's no.
Do we have any? Oh, Abraham.
Talk a little bit about. Could you talk a little bit about the rhythm of your editing, duration of scenes, and the kind of musicality in that work?
Sorry, I'm just trying to start. Can you repeat that question again?
The way
Because
you
all the
edit.
commotions are
About the rhythm
Uh-huh.
of the editing process and duration of shots.
I think because duration of shot, I think because I'm a photographer, I really want to sit on things. I really want to sit, because I think there's this. I really like when people can begin to interpret a frame, like photograph. You look at it and then you start having your own ideas, and I really like that about film, and I really like to create frames like that where it stays there long enough for you to start creating your own interpretation of the frame. As far as, you know, especially on a film like this, you know, we come from a culture where we're not governed by the tyrant of the clock. You know, things take their time. You know, you move from the sun to the shade. You move from the shade to under the tree, you know? And so we're not, you know, people don't say much. It's really about gestures and mannerism, and I wanted to kind of reveal that in the film. The way she looks at you, the way she looks at the character, you get the sense of what's going on. That's why I try to create in each frame or editing-wise. Like, I want us to get a sense of it. I don't want, I guess because I grew up watching films that I didn't understand the language, without, you know, seeing a French film that I didn't speak French, or a German film or something like that. I really wanted to make films that would never be lost in translation. That anyone can understand it wherever part of the world they are. They get a sense of the film.
Thank you.
Question here at front.
I was very curious about when you brought up displacement, and I guess I felt that through time, and this feeling of stagnancy, or people in these positions being torn almost apart by different forces in their life, like the mother, her husband, and how you were dealing with that, or how maybe things kind of unraveled while you were filming within the actor or the actress playing, and I don't know, more like personal details, I guess.
I mean, they're actors, so they you know, the professional actors, so they can do it. But when you talk about it, for me, as a consequence of displacement, is the fact that if she was back in her own country, there's all the support system she's got, and she won't probably go through this. But here she's isolated, and she has to deal with it on her own. And those kind of things that one deals with, when you migrate somewhere, or, you know, you're alone. You have to deal with things on your own. You have to, So I really want to, and I think that's what the film is about. In that, if she was back in her own country, she wouldn't have to deal with that. The actors. I mean, what was great is that the actors have a sense of that. They all come from the continent. They're all from Africa, from different parts of Africa, and they understood that. They understood that sensibility. So that helped definitely.
I thought it was so interesting the way the balance, the delicate balance between the different gender expectations that one has watching a film like this. Somebody's in a predicament and you have a certain number of assumptions start coming up as to how this problem is going to be dealt with, and somehow the way the story unfolded always seemed to challenge expectations and who was in the role of the powerful and who was in the role of the victim, and that was constantly being sort of unfolded and unraveled in such a way that it never was exactly as one would expect, right to the very last frame of the film, where we don't get this outcome, we don't know the outcome. I'm not asking you to tell us what the outcome is, but I'm just saying that the fact that that's theirs is something that is also what you're saying about leaving the frame and allowing interpretations to arrive. Even the way the story unfolds doesn't seem to give us a way to go in terms of expectations.
I mean, for me, for example, I think that for me the end is really interesting because when I was cutting the film, they had all the possibilities to create a different end, certain ends. And I came to the fact is, life is not resolved in anything we deal with. We just deal with it on a daily basis. You've got problems, it doesn't just stop. You just learn to deal with it. And the fact that he showed up in the hospital means he's there to assume his responsibility as the father. But he has to deal with it on a daily basis. Next day he might love the kid today, and the next day he might be mad. But the fact that he's there, and I didn't want to sort of have a cap on it because it's not resolved. He has to deal with it, and he might have to deal with it for the rest of his life. But it's there. That's why I really wanted to tell that it's there. It came to assume his responsibility, and that's what's And like Mom said, are we not sure that it's his anyway? It could be his.
Yeah. But he's who we stay with, even though we've been with her all along.
And the notion of father. I mean, in my language, there's no word for uncle. If my uncle walks in here, I'll introduce you as my father, because there's no word for uncle in my language. So, and it's that idea of child belongs to it's going to be raised by all of us. I mean, so really, that's what I was trying to play with. Yeah, I mean, thank you. I was working with a playwright, and it's all about dialogue, So like the script actually was a lot more dense, and I knew that I was going to take a lot out, but at that early stage, just for people to get the sense of it, and for me, I just realized that the less pages I have personally, the more I can create. So a script is a blueprint, and it should guide me. And what happens is that when there's so much page count, for lack of a better word, you're so restricted because you're so caught up in trying to get page coverage all the time, from my experiences. Or you have to get this page coverage and you've got 200 pages. So you just end up covering the pages rather than really creating. And I like scripts when it's just ideas, because it's really interesting when you work with actors as well in that process, because when it's just ideas and people start suggesting, things start coming in, you start expanding on it. And sometimes, a scene that you expect to be a 30-second scene on paper becomes a 3-minute scene, because you really give it the room to grow. And when there's so much page count, you're so caught up in so many things, practically, that you block those possibilities of it happening.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
And color. Earlier conversation where someone was stating about color and then location and knowing Nostra, knowing you, knowing your eye. There was one shot where you talked about there was blue and red and gold. Did you know that wall already? Had you seen that wall? And we're like location-wise, or had somebody been going out looking at locations, going like, oh, we've got this cyan blue, or oh, we've got this red and gold? Or did you already have an idea of those locations and the color walls?
No, actually, it's an interesting question. The main location, obviously, the rooms and the restaurant, definitely we had that. That particular location, we're just driving to another location, and I saw the wall. I'm like, we got to shoot this. Really, that's how it happened. And that's how it pretty much happens with me, you know? Sometimes I drive by a place and I like it. I'm like, remember that scene that we're supposed to shoot on the roof? Let's shoot it here. And that's the beauty of really working independently. Because if you're working with a studio, it's like you have to get permissions from 5 different people in order to shoot, in order to change locations. But for me as a filmmaker, that's the process I enjoy, and that's what I want to do. I want to be able to make films in that surroundings, in that environment, rather.
You talked about the group looking at other work, this being an educational environment. Could you tell us a little about some of the things you looked at that inspired you in the making of this film?
Well, yeah, definitely. Again, literature. I mean, first of all, visually, I think of African literature, and I think of someone like Amos Tutuola, you know. I always just picture if those were ever made into films, what they would look like, you know. So many things.
I
mean, a lot of things, you know, unconsciously as well. Definitely that inspires me. Ceremony around the deities, definitely. The colors, you know, very much. How people dress and the palettes, and very much I was influenced by that. Filmmaker-wise, Usman Samben, African filmmaker, Albert Ogunde, you know, Luciano Visconti, the intensity of Cassavetes on the Woman Under Influence, photographs of, actually what inspires me the most, really, and that's what me and my DP started with, is what we all know about Africa, the mask. The texture of the mask, what the masks look like. Everybody's got one, you know. The blue black. I wanted the skin to feel as almost if you scratched it, half of it would peel on your fingers. I really want you to feel that. I really wanted to show that intensity when I'm in the desert, in the Tuareg land, and I'm in the desert, and you know, the blue in the Tuareg wedding, you know, when they were in the indigo and it's already dyed on their skin. So those were very influential, definitely, as far as colors. Those filmmakers, Mambeti, Samben, Cassavetes, Visconti, definitely, its richness of color. Yeah. So many, I'm sure the minute I leave this room, I'm gonna come like, and for a lot of photographs, you know, Alex Webb, American photographer Alex Webb, you know, Under the Grading Sun, you know, this challenge for me is like, you know, as a photographer, the number 101 rule you don't do is shoot under the blazing sun, you know, which I love. I love the fact that you're, huh?
It was nice to see the overexposed window.
Yeah. I love that, you know, as a photographer, to be scared of the darkness is like, wow, you know, the less aperture, you know, as close as possible, you know.
When people are writing about photographing darker skins, they often now mention your films and your work because you're kind of now an authority on how to light dark.
No, for me, it's just really, when I think about skin color, I think about, you, again, being in an African metropolis and there's blackout and people are lit by car headlights,
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. You just see shadows and the skin coming in and out of light. I always find that so amazing. And I try to create, I always wanted that. There's something I really like about that. There's something I really like about the back, being backlit, and it's the silhouette of people. And there's so much one gets that I like very much. So I'm very. That's really amazing. Just hearing him, because again, I wanted to play with the language. The Yoruba language is really interesting because it's quite cunning, and things are proverbs. It's poetry. If people want, when your parents are advising you or telling you to do something, they don't tell you stop doing that. It's a proverb. It's like it's a proverb. It's like so they're gonna tell you a story. There was a monkey that went so, and you get it. You're gonna get it because it comes down to it's not supposed to be doing that. So that's the language. Yeah, fluorescent, definitely is something we've tried before. As a photographer, you knew if you shot fluorescent at one point, and what exposure. So, and the reflection as well, it's kind of, because when the reflection hits the reflection of the metal, it's the fluorescent. And because the fluorescent is obviously shuttle, shuttle speed. So you kind of get this kind of blurriness. I know it will exist. I know it will happen because I've photographed like that. So, and seeing her, I think what made that really interesting is just the color of her outfit as well. Because seeing the color of her outfit in front of that, it's like, oh, we've got to cover this. And it's that. And for me, I try to really create an environment where those things will happen. And I think as young filmmakers, that's really it. How do you create environments where things happen? And not really, but to create that creative surroundings where you have to experiment things. Sometimes you don't even know what they will turn out to be, but to be able to create those opportunities for accidents to happen that you will embrace. It's interesting to hear that, because I really feel like sometimes I look at my film and I'm like, oh my God, the actors are so static, So it's nice to hear that. It's a process, and I'm still in the process of like, how do I move my actors? How can they be free enough so I can cover them? And you embrace your strength, and my strength is photography. So I'm able to use that to, like the mirror. I don't know if I put the mirror, so I can play with that and pan it and stuff. So that's what I did really, embracing my strength and just really exploring it. And the actors, actually that scene wasn't that much movement. There was the mirror, but the mirror was doing all the job. I placed the mirror in certain angles of the room so that when he walks away, instead of me worried about focus at the end of the room, I see him walk off. And the focus stays the same thing. So when it comes back, it's back in focus again. It's really playing, and those are the kind of things you learn the more you play with camera. I started from that era. It was Super 8 cameras. We used to buy Super 8s and film and play with Super 8. So it's like really having camera as well really helps, just to play around with it and seeing what you can do. And so that's what we did there. Really, it's how do we let the actors be who they want to be, let them be free enough to create, and then walk around them. And talking about the same question, your earlier question, for me, that's the challenge. It's like, let them be as free as possible, but I have to walk around them. So if I have to place the camera, if I only have one shot or two shots, where do I put these cameras to cover everything the actors are doing? Or what's important for me that I want to cover? And sometimes maybe I just want to get the last bit of the coverage, but I really want them to go through the whole process, because then, for them it doesn't matter, because they have to go through that process in order to get to what I want, and I have to allow them to.
Yeah, I felt like your use of close-ups, but then also the density of every scene, both indoors and outdoors, is what made us feel like we were in another country,
Mhm.
because you know you were
Mhm.
very focused on those people and their environment and their interiority as well, their lives.
Yeah, and I really, for me, especially when you live in New York, what's interesting is like, what's great about New York, sometimes you go to different parts of New York and you feel like you're in some, you go to the South Bronx, you feel like you're in Colombia, you go to Queens, you feel like you're in India, you have communities, and I really wanted to show that part of New York, right? I mean, this is just an African community, but, you go to Harlem and it's like, you might as well be somewhere else. So I really wanted to kind of show that exists, I've been to so many parts of New York where I see that. And which we don't see very much in cinema, but that exists, so many communities in New York.
Right.
I like
Absolutely.
that. I mean, for me, it's really interesting because I always find, for me, what's fascinating to me is the fact that there's always been a solution. Now, I've got friends in New York that, wants to conceive, and they're going to specialists, and they're going somewhere, and for centuries, there's been a solution to this. People find, they didn't go to specialists, but they had a solution. And now there's always a solution to a problem. And we are not the inventors of those solutions. It's actually been for centuries. And there's something there. And which one is, and for them, not they believe that at least if your brother-in-law is the one that does impregnate, you know all the complications. You know the genetic problems. You can foresee that. So it's really it's that conversation of, and for him, for me, I wanted to show how matriarchic women are in African society, because we have this idea that women, notion of the world that Africa women are, but no, not really. Women are the one that really run things. In Yoruba culture, they are the one that run things, and I think that's one of the reasons why he's really pissed off that the two women that is close to play the trick on him. That does his head in. No, you're totally on point. I mean, that was my biggest fear, that it's not one of these melodramatic, films. I mean, I do love some melodramatic films. I mean, come on, Ali Fear hits his, what's that German film? Ali Fear Hits His Soul. It's one of the greatest melodramatic films, but it's so brilliantly on point, And after seeing something like that, I don't even want to try and. So for me, I was very conscious of that. How can I make it a little bit gritty or a little bit hard, and I think sound really helped, sound. For example, a really great moment for me is the moment she tells him that that's not your kid, I mean, that's going to be like one-on-one melodrama. Like, oh, it's not your kid, it's going to be screaming and everything. I remember cutting that scene. I'm like, this is not going to work. It's just this. I was trying to stay away from it, but I thought the sound did a great job, because it's like we knew what was going to happen, and the possibility of us not just imagining seeing them screaming, but we can't hear it, but the sound is doing it for us. I thought, those were the ways I tried to deal with it. So definitely I was very conscious of it, and I was trying to really steer away from it. But given that, the story itself, it's kind of, the arc of the story itself has got that element. So I was trying to shift away from that and making it as, I guess hard as possible, I should say.
How did the writer of the play feel about the end product of the film?
I guess she was great. I mean, for me, again, she's written the script, and for me as a director, it's my own interpretation. So she can go and write. She's written what she liked and what she's happy with, and for me, it's how do I interpret that as a visual filmmaker? That's my job, Our job as the writers, she's giving me the elements to work with, and as long as I cover the essence of the story, I think that's what it's really about. It's about the essence of the story, and I'm able to capture it. Then she was fine with it. So
well,
we didn't have that director writer Oscar conversation.
like Steve did.
Oh, I didn't say that.
Okay, well,
David, no question from you? I was expecting a question from you,
That's
Baba.
coming later in class.
Tomorrow in class we're good.
No, I thought you were looking at me.
Oh, no,
Okay.
no, Baba.
So then,
Thank you so
thank you
much.
very
Thank
much.
you so much. Thank you very much.
for bringing us back.
And as filmmakers, I think you should just keep,